Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Catalyst Conundrum. Episode 3, why do you need a compass to navigate Vuca? Before we do anything, I want you to look at this picture. I want you to stop right now, and I want you to record. It's important that you record out, make a video, record out what your reaction is to this picture. It's really important that you record before we go any further and do anything. It's really important that you record your reaction to this picture. I will compile other people's reactions so that we put it together, so that we have a shared understanding as fellow human beings what this is a picture of. How does it make you feel? How do you describe your feelings associated with this picture? All right, that's enough time. Let's move on. Let's take a step back and explain something here. It's a fact. 90% of digital transformations fail. What does this have anything to do with what we're working on? Why do you think? What we're working on from go to market, from go to customer, go to market is the analog version of a commercial system. Go to customer is the digital version. Resting in the fact that 90% of digital transformations fail should be an incredible eye-opener for all of us. Why are we going to just assume that we know how to change if 90% of digital transformations fail? Have you been through a successful digital transformation? Probably not. So to assume that you are automatically in the 10% is a fallacy. So let's talk through. We know that about 50% of the reasons that they fail is somewhere along the line, the clients terminate the initiative. Another 40% just reframe it, still call it a digital, but they don't really go after making the digital change in the first place. They just change the words around, throw technology at it, use a bunch of vocabulary, and boom. They call it a win, but really what you've done is rearrange the deck chairs. 10%, however, achieve breakthrough results. And it's very difficult to pay attention to the 10% because there's not a lot of case studies out there. And those who have been through it struggle to document what has been through it because it's really difficult to get teams and other people around them to document what's happening in the moment. So the story of how it actually happens, the breakthrough results, isn't documented well because the magnitude of the change and the variation of the change that we're going through is so massive. So to work backwards from those failure points, all initiatives get to an inflection point where you have to check inside yourself, either with your executive sponsors or whatever. An important decision needs to get made, an inflection point that the initiative can go one way or the other. That's what an inflection point is. So from that inflection point, most of them say, we're done here. This is too hard. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. We're out. Others say, look, I'm the executive sponsor. The optics are too great on it. Let's just scale down what it is that we're looking for So I can still claim it's a victory to all the other people that we've socialized it to, but we de-risk it. We take some of the risk out of it late in the game. Or others actually lean in and say, so what exactly is it that we need to do in the first place? What are the few things that we need to do in sequence? And that's how you drive the breakthrough results. Now, one of the things that we've been spending time talking about as a team is this disillusionment slope. You're in it. We're in Act 2. Things are going to get more volatile. The challenge is that we're actually managing the situation better inside with the client than we are inside our own team. Now, we have to confront that. We have to confront it head on, because this disillusionment slope, this negative trend downward, we got to check. And a lot of things that we have to check about are because we have not made the tools that we require to move forward. And we're going to talk about some of them today. And then also kind of working backwards from why they fail, it's how they get started in the first place. And I think the thing that we want to zoom in on and really talk about right now to make sure that we're really understanding what's happening here is that line all along is the status quo line. Everybody gets eager about trying to do something new, but then when you actually have to make your own changes yourselves as an individual, that's when that status quo gets disrupted. So even then, though, it still takes a lot of courage to agree to explore changing the status quo. So that's really what we want to zoom in right now is let's start here and recognize that all along this journey that we have key points. And what we did is we worked backwards from the fact that they fail. Maybe we should start out with how we scripted out in the first place. So let's make sure that we're really clear and understanding what's happening. That whole change journey is exactly this, just laid out in a different way. What do you think the white bar is? I hope you said that's a status quo line, because if it is, the status quo is on the left and the change is on the right. The status quo, people flock to it because it's comfortable. It's what's known. It's what we've always known. It's the way we do things. It's the way it's always been. You've heard all of those different things. It's how I've always worked. It's what I do. It's what I always do. You can hear all of the comments talking through what it looks like. The thing is, our clients and what we're doing, particularly with prototype stages, and the fact that we are a change and execution agency and a change catalyst. If we're going to talk about going to customer, we have to recognize that the muscle memory is around go to market. That's the left side. So let's zoom in and focus on that one individual, the one individual going down the beaten path. How comfortable do you think this is? Does this get more comfortable or less comfortable the farther they walk down that different path? What are you doing to make sure you're in the foxhole with the people that are working with that person every day? Is it possible that every day there's a lot of things that change, and if you're not paying attention to them, you can sooner or later be in a really terrible spot, which is in between the herd and where things are going. And then you're going to act in very unpredictable ways because you're a human being. So let's go back. We've talked a lot about this thing, this human being. Remember the alien exercise and when we, asked which one of these species would win? Why did this thing survive? Actually, we could say, why did this thing thrive? Now, what we know for sure is that the very first cave paintings were these. And somebody took some pigment from indigo and blew on a straw this pigment onto the wall, and it stuck. And what happened is more and more people started doing this. And the symbolism is, of course, is this is their identity, the individual identity. But what's very interesting is if you look at the duration of cave paintings, and this is a very primitive form, immediately they did them together. They clustered their hands together, some on top of them, on next to them, some overlaid like they're holding hands. But this is the community, this is the tribe, and they didn't. It's very rare that you would see these handprints not clustered together, and it wasn't very far in terms of evolution to when our forefathers were building paintings like this. And what these paintings represent and what they highlight is a hunt and the rules and how to coordinate a hunt. Now, I'd like you to just think about that for a second and what collaboration is. We've talked about orchestration and we're studying it from the understanding part. But imagine if we are in a cave and we have no vocabulary. We have no form ways to write with each other. The only thing we can do is point and draw pictures. This is how our brains are designed to work, through symbols, through collaboration. Yet we've allowed a lot of other things to get in the way of it as we've evolved and as we've been trained and things like that. We know how to do this. We know inside our DNA how to function as a tribe. We have always done this as a species, and that's what makes us an amazing animal. Now, I mentioned the word cave. So cave and tribe, they go together. These are cavemen. And one of the things that we want to highlight here, Plato actually has a book called The Cave. I really recommend that you read it, because what the cave represents is the thing that we know. Plato and everything about ancient Greece, they had writing. They had an amazing amount of things in comparison with the forefathers. But yet we still, because our brains were implanted and we were evolving when this was all going on, we're implanted to avoid risk. And risk is leaving the cave. Risk is going out into the unknown. There are many psychologists that argue that our biggest fear as a human, as a species, it's not the fear of death. As a matter of fact, more people fear public speaking than they do death. What we fear most of all as a species, is the fear of the unknown. It's the unknown that scares us. It's the unknown that makes us feel uncomfortable. It's the unknown that makes us do batshit crazy things that if you just had some more information from outside of the cave, you wouldn't react that way. Fear is something that all of us can identify. And I picked this picture here because I think everybody has seen the whole Fall of the Yellow Brick Road and the whole Wizard of Oz. The Yellow Brick Road is a journey. And the journey that these guys are overcoming is something very, very common. The Scarecrow wants brains. The Tin Man wants a heart. Dorothy wants to get home. And the lion wants courage. But yet at the end, everybody got what they wanted because they went through the journey. They didn't need somebody to give it to them. And that's why these things are so relatable to us. So let's go back to what we're doing. The first act that we want somebody to do, and that change initiative. Remember, change, the first step of the change initiative. And part of how we're doing is looking at things too cerebral and not looking at them emotively through the lens of how people act. We don't act logically. We use emotions to take action. We have to recognize that the emotive side of things is something that we're not paying enough attention to. And we need to do a much better job of being able to describe those things in tangible, predictable ways so we make it a lot more comfortable to leave the cave. We're going to have to do a ton of work just to get individual clients to agree to move the cave. But that's not even the hardest part. If you look at this arrow, a lot of us sort of believe that things are static, and that's just a wrong assumption. A wrong assumption is to assume that if we're doing a change initiative, let's say at Acuvia, we're doing a change initiative, and that person there, call that Jen and Matt, they're off in Act 1, and we're doing things daily. We're moving daily speed, and basically running down this side of the path. Well, Acuvia is also running because they're doing daily things too on the side over here, the status quo path, because they're doing lots of things also, just like you're doing lots of things also over here. And whether or not you're engaged on this side or not, that's only for you to decide. Whether you're engaged with the catalyst on Acuvia or not, or what awareness are you paying attention to the little drips, the daily drips, and how things are changing on this side? I don't think you realize. And that's why we have level sets, at least we do on the Acuvia team. We're not doing that inside our own team. But if you look at here, the distance, if you look at the area of these two things, this width is 3 times the width here. It's not 1 time, it's not 50% different. It's not 100% different. It's 300% different. At some point in time, our core team, if we're not laying down foundations here, our core team is going to start to get nervous of how far off, how far removed we are over here. That's why observations, making sure we're tackling them are so important. But where Act 2 really becomes the problem is because the end deliverables, AKA the game that we were out seeking, isn't clear yet. We just have some indications of it. However, the distance that we are now from our original is now 600% different than where we started off. We are 6 times farther away from the cave. So if you think about the cave as the safety, in Act 1, we are 3 miles from the cave. In Act 2, we're over 6 to 10 miles away from the cave. We can't get back there instantly. We'd have to take another journey just to get back to the safety of the cave. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because we're spending so much time trying to understand things, to create stuff, instead of using the fact that we're fellow human beings and that the situations that we're going through are the same kinds of situations that Jen and Matt and I are going to be encountering. And there's many, 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 many things that you can do to help ease it. Instead of trying to get to the answer in Act 3, we need to be able to keep the group along the way. So think about I'm going to foreshadow a little bit. Think about the exercise around the hang gliding and keeping the team together. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, but this is on purpose. What is Vuca an explanation of exactly? What is Vuca an explanation of exactly? Well, before we answer that, let's remind ourselves on a few things. In terms of clarity, getting clarity, are we going to think in terms of nouns, understanding, or verbs, taking action? Clarity is understanding plus action equals clarity. We need nouns and we need verbs. We are all conditioned to be really comfortable talking in the nouns, but are we comfortable enough talking about the verbs? So let's watch this. Video here together. This is one of my favorite explanations of VUCA because it's short, it's just words, and every one of the definitions really resonated with me. Let's watch it together. So what did you think? How much were you able to take action on a lot of the video in that? How did it make you feel? Did it make you feel clear, confused? Did you understand, but can you take action? So if you look at it, this was the imagery for volatility. This was the imagery for uncertainty. This is the imagery for complexity. This is the imagery for ambiguity. So in order to guide ourselves through all that stuff, does that make any sense? It does if you look at yourselves not part of the environment. But the reality is you are part of the environment. You are an agent. That's a term. You can go look up complex adaptive systems. You're an agent. You are involved in an ecosystem. You are part of your own environment. When you work on Acuvia, you're part of that team. We are infected by Acuvia's system. Acuvia is infected by their interactions with their customers who are part of a pharmaceutical industry that's part of an overall health, an entire health economy. So all of these different variables are at play. We need to make sure we have a compass to be able to handle it because it touches so many different things. The 7 principles are your compass. When you choose to not make this a priority, if you don't have this printed out and use it to level set yourself every time you work on Acuvia, then what you're doing is you're going off in the wilderness, moving yourself from the cave without a compass. That compass is what is the navigational aid that you need to always be able to get back to the cave. So here's one view of it. I'd love to get your view of it. For me, how do you make Vuca? What is Vuca exactly? It's a term. It's a term to describe the environmental forces disrupting to the status quo, or disruptive of the status quo, or disrupting the status quo in general. There's so many different variations that we can use grammatically to make this more clear, and all of them are true. That's what writing this is difficult, because of the scope and scale of what Vuca actually is. So what exactly is the status quo? What is it impacting? It's impacting complex human-based ecosystems. Examples: economies, societies, geopolitics, industries, systems, processes. We can go even further. Departments, and yes, teams. All of these are impacted. Okay. Vuca impacts the economy. Vuca impacts businesses. It impacts systems, teams, and individuals. Vuca impacts you. What happens is, as you know, what we've been through this week is this. Some of you might call it frustration. Some of it you might call feeling down, or I'm not doing it right, or general mopiness, low energy, as Trump might call Jeb Bush. But let's look at these things and see if we can diagnose the impact to you as an individual in an emotive state, that we can start making action type things instead of talking about it and talking about it and talking about it in a bunch of word salad nouns. Volatility. Things are moving so fast, I can't keep up. Things are moving so fast, I just wanted to slow down just for a little bit so I can get caught up. Does anybody feel that way? I know I do. I don't like making a video. I don't like making videos at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and 1 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, all while I have to do all of the work that I need to do to make things tangible and concrete for our client. No, I don't like doing that. But I do know that if I don't do that, then there's no way we're going to keep up as a team. And we have to be able to keep up because we've told them we're selling change. And in order to do that, we have to keep up. So speed and strategies on how to handle speed are something that impact us individually. And how are we going to just, if we're going, oh, well, speed is just going to be, I'm just going to produce a bunch of stuff. Well, that's being not informed and not intelligent. That's just reacting emotively. Uncertainty. So volatility, uncertainty. I need to know where we're going. I need context. I need more structure before I can do anything. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like, man, I don't know where this is going. Maybe somebody else should be working on this. Boy, if I could just do this, if I could just do that. These are all ways for you to avoid what's in front of you, which is uncertainty. There are tools and techniques you can use to create things that are more certain. Your expectation is binary, 1 or 0, and the world doesn't work that way. The world works in shades of gray, and you can always take a proactive stance to say, here's my understanding, and get somebody to react to it. Maybe you react to some of the people who have different time, but you keep doing it over and over and over again in short little bursts to match to the volatility, the speed. Complexity. I don't see how I fit into everything. My role is X, and I'm not going to do Y. I'm only supposed to do P, D, and Q. We've all heard stuff like that. That's not being aware of the complexity or seeing how everybody is related. It's okay if I don't do my part. It's okay if I don't do a video back. It's okay if I don't do this. You're not aware of how all of the things interoperate together. And if we try to show you how they interoperate together, it's going to create more uncertainty. You need to be able to recognize that just do what you're asked in simple forms to keep moving the ball forward. Also, ambiguity. I don't know what to do when hit with that ambiguity phase of where things are uncertain. I know that for me, that word makes me feel, I feel it in the pit of my stomach, like I want to throw up. But the way that I do this, I have a whiteboard right next to my desk, and I draw on it all the time. And I keep drawing on it until I can put a slide out there so that I can get people to react to it. This is why you need to create slides. Because what we're doing is, as we're confronting the ambiguity of it, guess what we're doing? By putting slides together that we all react to, we're making many, many, many more things to help Jen and Matt navigate these things themselves and also navigate these things inside their clients. The difficulty is when you don't have strategies to manage those things, and we don't make the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity real and relatable to our feelings, and verbs that we can act, just nouns that describe it. Great, these are conditions that are impacting me. What do I do? When they build up, you get overwhelmed. And you get overwhelmed, and it gets worse with time and deliverables and expectations and your inbox, and all of these things create distractions to the human brain, all of them. So what happens is we also trigger a primitive response in all of us. Once you get past the cerebral cortex, your frontal lobe, which is where we have our noun type thinking, the beaches or the waves and the bees and, oh, the gears, and isn't that great? Once we get past the cerebral, then we get into our monkey brain, which is a little more primitive. Me want this, me want that, me. So once you get out of the cerebral cortex, if you can't connect the dots there, and you get into the monkey brain, you get very you-centric. It just is a fact. It's psychology. And then once you get past that, you get into the lizard brain, your medulla oblongata, I think, is I can't remember, I can't totally pronounce it. But what happens is it triggers this response, your reaction response. Fight. I'm going to kill this thing. I'm going to stop doing this. Until I get what I want, I'm not doing this. Or you're going to freeze and be paralyzed. We're going to flight and quit. You know whether you've quit on this or not. You know whether you've quit in times or not. You know in situations like this where you've quit before. All of us have, because we're human beings, and this is a fact that we all deal with. Now, the issue is, how do we make this? And we don't make it by creating more and more pressure. What we do is we create tools in Act 1 for us in Act 2. And if we have the more of the tools that we create, the better, but that's this is where we are. So remember this picture. In Act 2, the distance between these things is great. And also in Act 2, Jen and Matt have all of these other people to bring on board. So if you think so we need performance from our team, and then we need performance from people within Acuvia. By you feeling sad because you don't have enough information and you're not getting enough inputs, and it's not structured enough, or things are moving too quickly, or you didn't know, so you decided you weren't going to prioritize. Whatever choice that you've chosen, you're not helping, because you're not doing the work required to help create and move things to be more clear. And this is going to feel hard for you to understand, but you need to understand that because of that, you have the lens of the cave. You have the lens of the current state. You have the lens of the left. And we want to move to the right. So basically, what we're talking about are the principles, are really that compass to help guide you from the stinking thinking that's over there with the devil. Everything that being driven forward, whether it be from Acuvia, or whether it be from me, or whether it be from Jen, or from some of the other people who are spearheading different efforts. That's not how I would do it. What's in it for you if you do it? In other words, what do I get for doing this? They don't appreciate you. So these are things that are being whispered in your ears. Why aren't they doing what you say? You have the answers. Why aren't you doing what they say? So that's the repeating thing in your head, the voices in your head, over and over and over again. You're way smart. You're the superstar. You're the hero. But the way that we need to be thinking about it, that's what the principles do. How do you get heard if you don't share what you're doing? If we win, if the team wins, you win. They appreciate me, or they wouldn't ask me what I think or to be on the team. What do your teammates think about this too? Maybe they have better solutions on moving forward. So these are the things to think about, and this is what goes on in our heads, and these are all very actionable, relatable things, because we're people. This is why we have the principles. It's the experience stupid. It's not the linear process. You have to get over that. You have to recognize that some of the things, if you're hitting your head and beating the wall and things aren't getting out, then maybe you need to ask yourself, am I focused on the experience? Stupid. Lead with you. I don't want to hear what you think about what the team is doing. I want to know what you think through your role. Lead with you. Lead with what your challenges are. That's how we make breakthroughs, because then we share each of our own individual viewpoints. When you start talking in aggregate about the team, you're avoiding the real issues and you're making the problems worse, because The team as a whole, of course, is going to want to go back to the cave because that's human nature. That doesn't help. Be heroic, think holistically, be engineered, confront reality, focus on the ongoing nature of it, be impactful with your messaging, and then be collaborative. Share your info with other people one-on-one first before as a group so that you can tweak it. If you put it out as a group and then you skip steps along the way, you've alienated and hurt the team, the tribe, as however you want. Trust the process. What is the process? Well, it's emergent, and that is hard for us to digest as people. And I need help, mostly from architect, to lay down processes as they happen so that we can anchor it moving forward. Get to yes quickly. Getting to yes means laying down what you think, laying down what I think, laying down what somebody else thinks, and then find areas of where you agree and where there's overlap and where there's differences. This is why solutioning just drives me bananas, because we haven't published what our assumptions are, our observations. So if there are 10 assumptions that go into a conclusion and you just present the conclusion and I don't see the other assumptions, maybe I can just disagree with 2 assumptions rather than reject the entire solution. But if you did a bunch of work on the solution and you didn't share with me what your assumptions were, then you're going to feel like, I do all this work and then I'm not getting heard. This is unbelievable. It's your frame of reference is wrong. And it's the frame of reference that we've been highlighting over and over again. So the way to do that is get to yes quickly. Be an orchestrator. We need to challenge ourselves more to use the orchestration orb because it is a part of everything that we're doing. Everything that we're doing has a technology element. It's got a people element. It's got a process element, and it's got a information and information architecture element. Everything does. It's not about getting it right, or it's about getting it right, not being right. Just because you went off and I know that you want the accolades and everything like that, that's human nature. The reality is by laying down information of what you see in observations and giving it information to the tribe so that we can figure out how to get it right is way more valuable than saying, me make spear. We need all of the information around us because this isn't about let's make a spear. This is about let's pick up out of this cave and move to a different environment. The type of change that we're doing is so massive. We have to be coordinated as a group. And these are the things that we need to get right. This is our compass. So I want to give some insight into trust the process. This is where I need a lot more curiosity. I see repeatable patterns over time. I ask us to get more curious. I'm asking you to get more curious. I spent some time and energy in terms of the hamburger story and making it more clear about what piloted limited production run is scale. I spent time on here's an example between C and sort. If we can fill in and just make some slides to do that, that would make me feel very, very more a lot more comfortable. But I think a lot of what we have to do is that we're just dealing with too much ambiguity, and we're on the brink. I wouldn't say the brink, but we could collapse. This is common. This collapse at this stage, and it's because we're not understanding the process enough. And taking a step back, people get way too impatient to take stock and look at the process. So what I'm going to do is let's go back to Vuca. Vuca, in a lot of ways, is a phenomenon. When you hear a phenomenon and remember your science classes in hopefully high school, hopefully you remember that a lot of science is about making observations about naturally occurring phenomenon. A phenomenon is a fact or a situation that is observed to exist or happen. especially one whose cause or explanation is in question. So if we have recurring patterns that exist over and over and over again, it's a phenomenon. If a platypus is a phenomenon, most by all explanation, it shouldn't exist. Phenomenon, the first step we have to do is we have to work to make it clear. Everything that we're running into within IQVIA is a phenomenon because it hasn't been described yet. Yet it's a common, recurring problem that happens over and over and over and over again because we don't have the space or the tools in business to think we're observing a phenomenon. A phenomenon would be, in the case of IQVIA, the repeating pattern of giving more and more work because I want more and more insight, I want more and more control on the backs of salespeople. That's not an IQVIA only problem. That's a problem everywhere. We need to work on making that situation clear so that management can see it. Management doesn't see it, they can't address it. Any solutioning that we do doesn't matter. So now let's talk about science. What is science? Science is the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study. Remember research? Remember our conundrum about research? Of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world. So salespeople within IQVIA, they are operating both in the physical and natural world. Why? Human beings are part of the natural world. Business processes are part of the natural world. If we choose to treat them as if they are not, we run the risk of repeating current biases over and over and over and over and over again. It doesn't matter if you've learned that first client is interested and then ADDIE, right? Awareness and then interest. But that's an artificial construct. We don't know if that's true or not. And why would we separate marketing processes from sales processes? Because people made them up in the past. It doesn't make any sense. Yet this is what we learn in business, and this is what the muscle memory is. That's what the herd is. That's what is in the cave. We have the ability to do something different, and we can choose to use the tools that have worked extremely well for us as a species, and that is the scientific method. And if you look at what we're talking about, look at how many steps in the scientific method. There are 6 steps. Of the 6 steps, 4.5 are dedicated to C. Think of that. 4.5 divided by 6 is what? That's the percentage amount of time spent on seeing. Seeing means picking the right question, something you're curious about, and framing it in the right and framing it into a question. You have to work really hard to make this question the right question. That means a lot of iterating. Then you make a hypothesis based on that question. You want to ask a lot of people, how do you think that the answer is going to come out? Then you need to create an experiment, a way to see whether or not your hypothesis is getting tested or not. Why is this so important? You need it in such a way that the people who aren't doing your method will have enough evidence so that they will accept it. If you do your experiment incorrectly, they will reject your findings. You need to populate it with data. Data are really just structured observations. Because what we're doing is sociological in a lot of cases, we need to have lots of documents of seeing, profiling out what we're doing in patterns so that we can make visualizations to be able to provide quote unquote data. Because right now people expect to have numbers, and we're not in the numbers business, we're in the human being business. And if we make it numbers, we're going to make it into noun conversations, And then noun conversations are going to create too much thinking and too much over engineering and too much stuff. Instead of saying, Grog want this, observation, observation, observation in terms of a structure, why not make it simpler? Analysis, once we have organization around 1, 2, 3, and 4, now we can review and draw conclusions. You don't just say, ask question, answer, boom, here's our report. That's not right. And then your report, you need to explain your results and whether or not your hypothesis was correct or not. And in that gap, that's where you've learned so much and gained so much insight. Now, what we need to do is we need to make some amendments here. So one thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we're being curious. Pick something that you're curious about. I want Dave to be curious about architectures. I don't want Dave to tell me what architectures are. I want him to be curious and engage me with that. I want Phil to be curious about what capabilities are and engage me. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Trial and error until we get a common question. I don't want him to give me the definition of it because that excludes me and I don't know what he's been thinking. I want Walter to engage me about to be curious about what clarity means, not assume. I want detangler to be curious about what detangling means. I want tester to be curious about what tester means. I want conceptor to be curious about that. And then I want us to create hypotheses and experiments and data. But by the experiments, we have to experiment by doing so that we have evidence of concrete things that work, not abstract ideas that we experiment for plans all over the place. We can put pen to paper, make documents, complete those documents ourselves so that we have our own experience with it. You tweak the documents that we have in the experimental part, then we make observations about how each person responded to, then we analyze what's the right answer, and then we produce the output. And then the one thing that I would also recommend that we have to do or change is that we have to change this analyze phase to synthesize. Now, all of these different parts are things that Conceptor Tim can put together for us and switch them out. I just want you to start having some tools, some concrete things to be able to look at. Now, this is a document that I know we've seen and shared. Maybe I haven't gone through it enough. That's on me. Flip side, you haven't asked about it. That's on you. Go back and forth between these things. But what this is an inventory of the fields of science of what it is that we're working on. So if you look at this here, there's the clarify your value message, economic theory of value. We have a webinar or a recorded keynote presentation 100% about this. We can keep tuning it and making it more clear, more accessible. Look at what the dots connect it to. The dots are connected this way and this way. The psychology of decision making. What are we doing to talk about that? How are we making our observations more clear? Why is it that the data that we collected at Forrester are interviewing tons and tons of executive decision makers? Why does this information not resonate? And how hard is it? What do we need to do to keep making it clear? The communication theory, I think we all can associate with this as message, messenger, audience. Where does that come from? What are we looking to do there? What are we doing? And what's the difference between this and this? When we say scale, do we mean scale at from pilot, limited production run, or prepare and then scale? Is that what's meant? No, by the way. And then why is this linked to sociology, gaining consensus, getting many people involved? Are we curious about the sociology of things and ideas? These are two areas, are gigantic gaps for us. And then allocate and optimize resources. What kind of systems thinking are we putting in place? In some cases, we go way too much here, but we're doing it not in a systems thinking way, in a very rigid way. But look, these things go together. Why does it start here and go this way? Why doesn't it go here and go the other way? What do you think? Why does clarify your value message? Why is that first? What does knowledge sharing mean? And why does this say experiential learning? Why is the very first question? It's the experience stupid. So important. Why is this label called knowledge sharing? What actually is knowledge? Are we clear on that? Or do we talk past each other? And then what's this stuff in the middle? Make sure it fits together. That sounds like orchestration. What's this complex adaptive systems? What we're talking about here is there are fields of science for each one of these things that we can draw from and get inspiration from. All we have to do is translate it into the words that we're doing, pick off and rip off tons of stuff that they're doing, and make documents for it. That's all we got to do. So I think this is an example of overthinking. What I will notice is that there's, if you lay this out in our vocabulary, the things at the top, these fields of science, help to understand. These fields below help to act. And it makes sense that these are more people-based, right? And it makes sense that these are more scientific or system-based, right? And we have to connect the dots because these things all this boundary here. We all work within the same environment, within the same ecosystem, within the same team. Whatever word you want to use to describe what this boundary is needs to be orchestrated. It's got to fit together. And there is behavior that is knowable by things that we can pull from complex adaptive systems. So let's score how we're doing. The first one, the one in the back, represents, are we understanding? And then the bottom one is, are we acting? Right? So 2 scorecards in terms of clarity. I'm going to ask clarity to make a better scorecard of this. And then whether or not this is ask questions of whether this is complete, this model is complete or not. But in terms of the understanding the value equation, I think a lot of us understand it. I think I got some feedback. I didn't get feedback of proving whether you know it enough to take action against. The only person on our team that tried to use the value equation was Detangler. Detangler did in the Detangler where he used the value equation, asked or encouraged other people to use it to apply to themselves. To this day, only the Detangler has gone through and tried to take action against economic theory of value. The communication theory, message, messenger, audience. Are we using those devices to be able to help categorize what we're talking about or what's happening? And the answer is no. Not one of us has used message, messenger, audience in anything that we've done that I've seen. Allocate and optimize resource systems thinking. Think about that as the relationship rhythms. I'm not really sure we fully understand that. I think some of us do, some of us don't. It's been really hard to be able to articulate it. Has any of us used a derivative work off of the relationship rhythms to explain or to describe anything? The answer is no. So none of us have even used that. In terms of orchestration, do I think that we understand connecting the dots with the complex adaptive systems and fitting together? I don't think so, because we haven't really connected the dots and we're not challenging ourselves enough with it. And the orb is way more of a thing to use than it is to understand. So we don't really have a write-up of it in terms of understanding, and we don't really have a lot of examples of it being used in a way that's driven some sort of outcome. We've got some use cases, I guess, along the way that are more in the understanding zone. So I think that we just have some work to do. Maybe yellow is probably a better scorecard than 2 reds. Let me change that. That's a probably unfair grade. Let's put yellow and yellow, because I think we're sort of trying to figure this out as we go, and we need some structure here. Orange, maybe that's a good color. No, we'll do just yellow. Okay. Now, let's relaunch here. There we go. Okay. Now, in terms of action, what have we done to lean forward into, say, the risk factors um, of the value equation, or buying trends, or moving past from all the certainty and the buyer personas and buyer journey and all that BS? And are we leaning enough into emotive drivers? And are we talking enough honestly about what we're doing? Are we leading with ourselves? And the answer is no. I don't think we're doing nearly a good enough job of that. And we don't have any of the tools. We're not leveraging any of the scientific studies associated with psychology, or even searching on any of that as a way to help us gauge what's going on. In terms of sociology, I guess the first question would be, what's the difference between sociology and psychology? Do you know? And then also, why is gaining buy-in and the steps that we need to follow so important? Why are we tone deaf to that? These are all examples of what it takes in order to drive change moving forward. My observations are the lack of understanding of psychology, sociology, and experiential learning is what's preventing us from unpacking Townsend. It's what's preventing us from um, taking advantage of the full advantage of the hang gliding experiment, uh, unpacking the exercise around change. All of those were extremely well designed programs, and we're not. I don't have enough tools in place because they're more in the zone. And I would be helped by unpacking if people were more curious and open minded and thinking like psychology, like sociology, or through experiential learning. So, part of what we will do is we will move more quickly in terms of action if we get more curious about what these things are and understand that there's, when we go over here to understand too much and not drive enough action enough, there are fields of science that we can go through. If you're stuck, or you see another person stuck, go to psychology. If you're trying to get a group to buy in or a group to behave, go look at sociology. And if you're trying to find ways to share different things, learn about experiential learning, and don't default to the assumption that classroom setting of where you're going to just get taught things and that's your expectation. You got to let go of that. That model doesn't work. It's not effective. I encourage you to go research it and go find evidence that the industrial revolution style of teaching actually works in a VUCA environment. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that everything that we're doing is about dealing with change. And I don't think we're nearly equipped enough or aware enough of exactly of how change actually happens. And until we do more work and be curious and recognize the psychology of it, the sociology of it, the experiential learnings associated with what change is, it's going to be difficult for us to help drive change in early stages for our clients and build effective prototypes. One thing I think we can all relate to is change is from what to what. And what we want to do is we want to make the current state seem as dark, as dreary as possible, and the future state as bright and sunny as it can be. This is a heck of a metaphor. And the reason that I have it laid out like this in a picture format, and the reason I have this in a picture format, I have this in a picture format is because it's relatable and it ties into that many metaphors. Metaphor is the elephant in the room. The other metaphor is when you turn the lights out and everybody's feeling around, people are describing what they're feeling, and what they're doing is describing a tusk, or the trunk, or an ear, or the tail, or the leg. And when you turn the lights on, you see that you've really been describing an elephant. So that's a situation. This is very symbolic in many, many, many different ways. And what it does is it allows people to come together. It allows people to come together, a shared identity. This is something that's very shared too. I think we all can relate to this, because that's really what we're talking about, is the departure from what to what. Now, in this departure here, from what to what, we have different tools along the way. We have this value perception matrix, which we've used. I'd love more curiosity around it. But in order to describe what this looks like, we talk about go to market to go to customer. When you talk about go to market, how concrete is it? People know what products are. People know what place means. People know what promotion means. People know what price is. But when we go over here, when we say what's possible, how do we make that clear? What do we mean tangibly by pattern? What do we mean concretely by path? What do we mean by proof? Proof, by the way, is the collection of evidence. So part of what we do is we expect that there's this massive apparatus to help us go from where we are to where we want to be. And we have all of these tools and technologies, and let's just throw stuff at it to make this change happen. But the reality of it is the bridge that we're going across from the non-VUCA world to the VUCA world, from the analog world to the digital world, is it looks like this to most of us, trying to do it on the first time. And what that means is we might as well need to take that leap. We have that fear factor. So it's easy for us to sit on the sidelines and say, IQVIA should do this. IQVIA should do that. It's okay if I don't do my part. But then what you're not doing is you're not getting this person's back. You're not being empathetic of what they're feeling here. And I know all of you know what you're feeling here, because you went through this experience here and we all talked about it. How many of us would really actually go and do this? But yet, here's Jen going through all of this stuff ourselves. Are we getting her back? Are we making sure the wings are checked? Are we going through and studying out? Have we built the briefs to highlight out for Phil all of the science that he needs to be able to look at it? Are we providing the information that we learn on each time we go do it? Are we documenting those things like scientists do? The answer is no, we're not. And we need to, because that's how we get our clients back. Let's go back and talk about the elephant in the room too. The elephant also is IQVIA. It's our client. How in the world is it possible for such a tiny little company that we've got, that we're driving this amount of impact and change within this elephant? How are we doing it? Do you know? That's not the topic for this particular conundrum, but it's something I need you to be curious about. I need you to be curious about how all this stuff fits together. I need you to be asking questions and thinking about those kinds of things. Because the reality of the world here is multidimensional. Over here on this side is the cave. Look at how much people want to hold on for their dear life, just to be able to do that and take a step. And look, some of the steps along the way to get to the other side, this beautiful world over here of successful OCE, means we have to build things here. We did this. Tell me how engagement plans are part of our scope at IQVIA. Well, they were in the way. How did we know they were in the way? Because we were engaged and understanding the psychology and sociology of our clients. We're not looking at it just in the abstract one. If we only look at it in the abstract one, the abstract land of stuff, understanding stuff, we miss all of the great things. It's all about helping find out what is this plank in front of us and go build that, and then build the next plank and make sure that we have planks here so that that once this elephant gets across, then they can get more people within IQVIA to go across this bridge. And we keep building on this bridge between the cave and this new state to where we bring more and more people along. So this bridge doesn't look like this bridge. It starts to look more like this bridge. And this is the scale bridge. This is the adult money bridge. We're not there yet. We need to go over here, this rickety bridge here, and go through the uncomfort ourselves to get over here, to take the flowers over here and bring them back over here to the current state and say, look, if you do go through all this stuff, here are examples of the beautiful things that you can take. And that's what we're doing. So this week and the next week and moving forward, we're going to challenge ourselves a lot with this. It's the hero's journey. Start getting curious about it, because it is the way to be able to describe that path. We still need to do a much better job of documenting the things along the way, following the scientific method, and be curious about it. But don't get so focused on it that you're losing sight of what else is coming. Every one of the videos that we've been sharing, we've been laying out examples of what's coming. We need to be much more curious and anticipating and start connecting the dots. That's why I need to have videos from you guys. The amount of videos that we're taking and sharing whether we're curious or not, instead of just dictating what your answers are in your lens, it's just not there. And I need to know how you're processing this information so I can orchestrate it and bring it all together. So these are the things that we're working on. Vuca, how do we make it more clear? Let's embrace science. We have a process. There's things in this that each of you can do. And if each of you make 3 or 4 slides to make it concrete, we'll have 20 slides to use this week. Thank you very much. I look forward to getting your feedback.